Day 1. I woke up, looked at my phone, and my first instinct, as it had been every single morning for 26 years, was to think in my mother tongue, to mutter something to myself in the language I grew up with, the language of my home, my family, my dreams. And I stopped myself, and I said, out loud to no one in the room, "Today is day 1, English only."
And how did that feel?
Honestly, it felt like I was about to do something slightly insane, like standing at the edge of a diving board and looking down at the water for the very first time.
Welcome back to Speak Real English, the podcast that bridges the gap between the English you learned and the English the world actually speaks. I'm David.
And I'm Pavisha, and today I'm going to take you through the most challenging, most surprising, most genuinely life-changing thing I have ever done for my English. 30 days, no native language, English only. Every conversation, every thought I could control, every journal entry, every voice note to myself, all of it in English.
And I want to be clear before we dive in. This is not a look how amazing I am story. Some of these days were hard. Some of them were embarrassing. Some of them made Pavisha want to quit entirely.
Day 11 nearly broke me. We will get there.
But by day 30, something had genuinely shifted. And if you were someone who has ever dreamed of feeling truly comfortable, confident, and natural in English, this episode is for you. Stay with us. Okay, before we go day by day, let's talk about where you were before the challenge, because context matters. When you decided to do this, what was your English like? What were you struggling with?
So at this point, I had been learning English for about 9 or 10 years. I could hold a conversation. I could write a decent email. If you tested me on grammar, honestly, I'd probably do pretty well. But there was this ceiling, this invisible wall. Whenever I spoke for longer than a couple of minutes, I'd get this creeping anxiety. My sentences would get shorter. I'd start second-guessing every word. I'd switch to simpler vocabulary because I was scared of getting something wrong.
The fluency freeze.
Exactly. And I had read every article, watched every YouTube video about how to become fluent, and they all said the same thing: immerse yourself, immerse yourself. And I thought, okay, I live in a non-English speaking country. I can't just move to London. So what if I create my own immersion right here, right now, in my own life?
And that was the genesis of the 30-day challenge. So tell us, what were the actual rules? Because I think some people listening might want to try this themselves.
Okay, the rules were simple but strict. Rule 1, every thought I could consciously control had to be in English. I couldn't stop every subconscious thought, obviously, but anytime I caught myself thinking in my native language, I had to immediately translate and continue in English. Rule 2, every voice note I recorded, every journal entry I wrote, every to-do list, English only. Rule 3, any conversation I had with someone who also spoke English, English only, even if it felt awkward. Rule 4, I watched, read, and listened to only English content for 30 days. No native language TV, no native language music, nothing.
That is a serious commitment. What about family, friends who don't speak English?
That was the one exception. I couldn't make my grandmother speak English to me. So conversations with people who genuinely couldn't communicate with me in English, that was the only exception. Everything else was English.
And you documented everything.
Every day, a voice note, a journal entry, or both, which means I have 30 days of raw, unfiltered, sometimes cringe-worthy evidence of this entire journey. Lucky me.
Lucky us. Okay, let's go through the 4 weeks, week by week. And don't hold back. I want the real story.
Oh, I'll give you the real story. Day 1 was genuinely exciting. I set up a little journal. I had this beautiful notebook specifically for the challenge. I made my first voice note and I said, and I quote, "Today I begin my English journey. I am feeling very excite." And Davik, I said very excite, not excited. Excite.
Already off to a perfect start.
But that was actually the whole point. I recorded it, I listened back, I caught the mistake, I corrected it. I am feeling very excited. That self-correction loop, that was the foundation of the whole month. By day 3, I hit the first real wall, thinking in English. I had no idea how loud my own thoughts were in my native language until I tried to stop them. It was like trying to stop humming a song you don't even realize you're humming. My brain kept defaulting. I'd catch myself mid-thought, already 3 sentences in, and have to rewind and restart in English. It was exhausting.
What did you do?
I started narrating my day, out loud, quietly, like a running commentary. I'm making coffee, the kettle is on. I need to reply to that email from work. Small things, but it kept my brain anchored to English instead of drifting back.
That is actually a technique I teach all my students. Narration rewires your default thinking language faster than almost anything else. It forces your brain to make English the language of everyday life, not just the language of formal situations.
Day 7 was the first moment I thought, okay, this might actually work. I had a phone call with a colleague in English, and I noticed that I wasn't preparing my sentences before I said them. I was just talking, still making mistakes, but talking, naturally, without the usual panic. And when I listened back to my Day 7 voice note compared to Day 1, even in 1 week, there was a difference. My Day 1 voice was stilted, careful, slow. Day 7 was warmer, faster, more me.
That is huge. In just 7 days, because you were using it constantly, not just in dedicated study sessions. You were living in the language.
Week 2 is where things got uncomfortable. The novelty had worn off, and suddenly every limitation in my English felt amplified. I'd be mid-conversation, and the word I needed just wasn't there. In my native language, it would have come instantly. In English, I'd have to pause, search, and either find a simpler word or just trail off awkwardly. It started to feel less like a challenge and more like a punishment.
This is what I call the awkward plateau, and it happens to almost every language learner. The initial excitement carries you through the first week. Then reality kicks in. You become hyper-aware of every gap in your vocabulary, every hesitation, every imperfect sentence, and it feels like going backwards, even though you're not.
Day 11. This is the day I nearly quit. I had a really important call with a potential client, someone I had been trying to get a meeting with for months. And the call was going fine, actually, until she said something I didn't understand, a phrase I'd never heard. I asked her to repeat it. She repeated it. I still didn't get it, and I panicked. I completely froze. I gave this vague, mumbly non-answer, and when the call ended, she sent a follow-up email that was very polite, but clearly showed she hadn't understood what I was trying to say.
What was the phrase she used?
Let's table that for now. I had no idea what it meant. Table it. Table, like the furniture? I thought she wanted to end the discussion. I later found out it means let's set that aside and come back to it later, the exact opposite of what I thought.
And this is a perfect example of why immersion matters, because table in that context would never appear in a textbook. It's a very common business phrase, but you only really encounter it in real conversations, real meetings, real professional settings.
That night, I wrote in my journal, Day 11, I want to quit. My English is not enough. I am not enough. And I reread that entry now, and it breaks my heart a little for past me. But it was also a turning point, because instead of quitting, I turned that specific failure into research. I spent an hour that night just learning business phrases. Circle back, move the needle, touch base, table it. I turned the embarrassment into fuel.
And that right there, that is the mindset that separates people who break through from people who stay stuck. You didn't use day 11 as evidence that you couldn't do it. You used it as information about what you needed to learn next.
By day 14, something interesting happened. I started dreaming in English. Not full sentences, not full conversations, but fragments, English words and phrases appearing in my dreams. And I know that sounds like a small thing, but it felt enormous. It felt like the language was starting to live somewhere deeper, not just in my studying brain, but in my sleeping brain.
Dreaming in a language is one of the most well-known signs of deep language acquisition. It means your language has moved from active, effortful processing into something more automatic. Your brain was reorganizing itself, literally.
I voice noted myself at 6 in the morning, half asleep, saying, I just dreamed in English. I think it's working. Very scientific documentation. Halfway, day 15, and I took stock. Honestly, my English was not perfect. I was still making mistakes, but the quality of my mistakes had changed. In week 1, I was making basic grammar errors, tense confusion, missing articles, wrong prepositions. By week 2, my basic grammar was becoming more automatic. The mistakes I was making in week 3 were more sophisticated, getting idioms slightly wrong, misusing a phrasal verb, saying something that was grammatically correct but sounded unnatural. And somehow, that felt like progress.
It is progress. Your errors evolving is one of the best signs of language development. Elementary errors give way to intermediate errors, which give way to advanced errors. Every stage of mistake is a stage of growth.
Day 18 is the day I call the confidence click. I was at a work meeting, in person, and someone asked me a complicated question. A year ago, I would have given a short answer to avoid making mistakes. But on day 18, I answered fully. I spoke for probably 2 or 3 minutes straight, making my point, using examples, even making a small joke.
Because that kind of recognition from someone who doesn't know you're doing a challenge, who has no reason to be kind, that is real. That is your actual English landing on another person and making an impression.
Exactly. It wasn't a compliment on my English, it was a compliment on my thinking, my ideas, my personality through English. That's what I had always wanted, not for people to think, oh, her English is good, but for people to just connect with me. And on day 18, that happened. By the end of week 3, I noticed something I hadn't expected at all. I was developing a voice in English, not just vocabulary or grammar, an actual personality. The way I said things, the phrases I naturally reached for, the rhythm of my sentences, it was starting to feel like mine, not copied from a textbook, not imitated from a TV show. Mine.
This is one of the most beautiful stages of language learning that people don't talk about enough. Finding your voice in a second language. It's not just about fluency, it's about self-expression, about feeling like you are the one speaking, not just a person translating themselves into another language.
Week 4 felt different from the start. The effort had softened. Speaking English no longer felt like climbing a hill. It felt more like walking on flat ground. Still walking, still moving, still paying attention, but the resistance was gone. I stopped noticing that I was speaking English. I was just communicating, thinking and saying in one motion without the translation step in the middle.
That is the definition of fluency, by the way. Not perfection, not an accent, not never making mistakes. Fluency is when the gap between thought and speech shrinks to almost nothing. When the language becomes transparent, you see through it to the meaning, rather than seeing the language itself.
Day 28. I had another call with that same client. The one from day 11, the one where I completely fell apart. And this time, I was ready. We talked for 40 minutes. I used every business phrase I had learned. When she said, let's table that, I responded instantly, absolutely, we can circle back to that in our next call. And there was this tiny pause, and she said, you know, you remind me of someone I used to work with in New York. I don't know if she meant my English or my energy, but either way, I will take it forever.
That is a full circle moment. Day 11 nearly ended the challenge. Day 28 was the proof of why you didn't quit.
Quietly, yeah, that call meant a lot. Day 30, I woke up, reached for my phone, and my first thought was in English. Without trying, without forcing it, it just happened. I noticed it about halfway through the thought, and I put my phone down, and I just sat there for a second. Because that had never happened before the challenge. My brain had actually reorganized. English had moved in.
That right there, that is the result. Not a test score, not a certificate. A morning thought in English that arrived without any effort at all.
I cried a little. I'm not going to pretend I didn't.
You're allowed to cry. That's 30 days of real work. Okay, Pavisha, let's talk numbers and lessons, because people listening to this want to know, was it actually worth it? What changed specifically?
Okay, I have actual data from my voice notes. I timed my day 1 recording and my day 30 recording. Same prompt. Tell me about your week. Day 1, I spoke for 1 minute 40 seconds before I ran out of things to say and started repeating myself. Day 30, I spoke for 7.5 minutes without stopping and still had more to say. Same prompt, 7.5 minutes.
Nearly 5 times the output in 30 days.
And it wasn't just quantity, the quality changed completely. Day 1, I used maybe 20 or 30 different vocabulary items. Day 30, I counted, I used over 120 distinct words and phrases in that 7-minute clip. Idioms, phrasal verbs, natural connectors, casual expressions, things that would never have come out of my mouth on day 1.
So let's give people the practical lessons, because I want listeners to be able to take this and run with it, whether they do a full 30-day challenge or just take pieces of it. What are the top things you learned?
I didn't study for 8 hours a day. I didn't do anything extreme. I just used English consistently, in small moments, all day, every day. Making breakfast, walking to work, replying to a message. 15 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Accumulated over 30 days, that consistency built something that 2 years of weekend study sessions hadn't. Every time I struggled, like the table it moment on day 11, that was my brain telling me exactly what to study next. The challenge taught me to treat confusion as a compass, not a stop sign.
This is huge. So many learners study grammar chapters in order, work through vocabulary lists alphabetically, but the fastest learning happens when you study the thing you just failed at. Your real-life mistakes are a perfectly personalized curriculum.
You do not need to move to an English-speaking country to immerse yourself in English. You need to make English the default language of your inner world, your thoughts, your notes, your entertainment, your self-talk. Immersion is a decision. I made that decision for 30 days, and my English moved faster in those 30 days than in the previous 3 years combined.
Day 11 nearly ended the challenge, but it was also arguably the most important day of the entire month, because the moment Pavisha chose to stay and to turn that embarrassment into a study session was the moment the challenge became transformational rather than just motivational.
Quietly, yeah, that call meant a lot. If I had quit on day 11, I would have confirmed to myself that my English wasn't enough. By staying, I proved to myself that hard days don't mean failure. They mean growth. The last thing, and this is the one that surprised me most, is that 30 days of speaking English changed how I see myself, not just as an English speaker, as a person. Because when I found my voice in English, when I stopped performing and started just being, I realized that language isn't just communication, it's self-expression, it's identity. And being able to express who I truly am in a second language, that is one of the most empowering things I have ever done.
Pause. That's it. That's the whole reason we do this podcast. Pavisha, final question. If someone is listening to this right now, someone who has been studying English for years, who feels stuck, who keeps hitting that same invisible ceiling, what do you say to them?
I say, you are not stuck because you're not talented enough. You're stuck because you're not using it enough. You can study English forever and stay exactly where you are, or you can start using it, imperfectly, in your real life, starting today. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled with more grammar lessons. It's filled with more real conversations, more real moments, more real English.
And you don't have to do 30 days. Not everyone can do 30 days all at once, but you can do one day. Tomorrow, wake up and try to think one thought in English before you reach for your phone. Just one. That is your day 1.
And we want to hear about it. Right now, in the comments, tell us, are you taking the challenge? Even just for one day? Even just for 1 week? Write it down. I'm starting today. Day 1 tomorrow. Whatever it is, make it public, because the moment you tell someone, it becomes real.
We read every single comment on this podcast, and if you post a comment saying you've started the challenge, we will reply. We will be there for day 1, day 11, day 30. This community is your immersion environment.
If this episode moved you, please share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear this story. because there is someone in your life right now, a friend, a colleague, a family member, who has been feeling stuck in their English, who doesn't believe they can break through. This episode might be the thing that changes that for them. Be the reason someone starts their day one.
Subscribe to Speak Real English so you don't miss episode 4, where we are doing a deep dive into the English phrases you need for the workplace. Job interviews, emails, meetings, dealing with difficult conversations at work. If your career depends on your English, that episode is going to be essential.
And one last thing, whatever day you are on in your English journey right now, day 1, day 100, day 1000, I want you to remember something I wrote in my journal on day 30. I wrote, "It was never about becoming someone else. It was about becoming more fully myself in a bigger language."
Take that with you.
See you in episode 4.
Keep speaking. Keep showing up.